talk about designing for emotion. It's a really sensitive mic. Now? Better? All right. I promise I'm human, guys. So today we're going to talk about designing for emotion in native mobile apps. My name is Mike. That's my Twitter handle. I lead the team at Livefront. We design and build mobile apps, iPhone, iPad, Android apps for corporate clients. We're a sponsor here at Ministar because we love you. I co-founded Smart Factory. We teach people design and development software. It's a school. And we actually have iOS and Android classes coming up. Today only, if you sign up, 30% off. So talk to me afterwards if you want to get a promo code for that. Also co-founded Tech.mn, which is news about Minnesota tech. Here locally, we have got a session after this, so check that out too. Enough about me, let's talk about this guy. When surveyed, 3 out of 5 people admit to yelling at their computer. Right? 3 out of 5 people yell at their computers, which obviously means that 2 out of 5 people are lying. Right? We all yell at our computers. And this is interesting because we, as humans, like creative, intelligent human beings, right, top of the food chain, but we do this. We yell at our computers. We blame inanimate objects, which is another way of saying we're all crazy. Right? But as humans, we assign blame. When we get angry, we assign blame. But blame or credit, really, can only come about if the thing that we're blaming, if we treat the thing that we're blaming as if it made human decisions, like it decided to get mad at us. That's the only way that blame actually makes sense. And the scientific term for this is called anthropomorphism, which essentially means that we project human emotion onto everything, everywhere, all the time. And that includes software products, right? So here's a dude on the right and computer or phone or software product on the left, right? And if everything goes well, if the experience with my computer matches my expectations, I love it, right? You hear people talk about this all the time. I love that. I love my phone. I love that app. That's such a great app. The opposite is also true. I hate that app. It makes me really frustrated because I have these expectations and then I'm disappointed, right? And I'm let down. Meanwhile, of course, the app or the phone or the computer is blankly staring back because it's an inanimate object, which makes us even more upset, and we yell at it or beat it with a shovel and bury it in the backyard. Right? So what we're going to get into and what we'll talk more about later is that the same principles that make for pleasurable and effective interactions and relationships between people and people are the exact same principles that make for effective and pleasurable interactions in people and products. Okay? So emotional design, what we're talking about here today, emotional design is understanding the connection between emotions and actions and applying that knowledge to make a human connection through design. Understanding the connections between emotions and actions. And so as designers, as product managers, as product marketers, as product owners, as CMOs, whatever it is that you do every day, we want to design an emotional response when we're building these mobile apps that increases the likelihood that a user will do a desired behavior, perform a desired behavior, right? And that desired behavior could be anything. It could be just clicking the submit button to sign up, to use your app. It could be upgrading their account or making an in-app purchase. It could just be convincing them to not beat the computers with shovels. That desired behavior is for you to design based on your business goals. So I want to dive into this. We've talked about what is emotional design. It's creating a connection or understanding the connection between emotion and action, right? But I want to spend a little bit of time talking about why do we design for emotion? What is emotion? And then get a little more practical and say, okay, how do we do this? As designers, how do we think about, at a high level, emotional design so we can apply it to our everyday work? And for that section, in the second half of this presentation, I'll use a lot of real-world examples. I like to go out and just grab, here's a bunch of apps from the App Store, and we'll walk through. So why design for emotion? Because designing for usability isn't good enough. There's a ton of presentations and a ton of books on usability and user experience design, and don't get me wrong, those are like really great and super important. But that's just the beginning. And unfortunately, if you make a usable interface, you're doing really well in our industry, right? It's all we talk about making sure that the interface is usable, but we don't apply usability as a standard of excellence in other industries, right? If we did, everything would be much different for us, right? This toilet is usable. This toilet is usable. We didn't stop there because it's usable. We didn't stop designing toilets to come up with a better toilet just because it's usable, right? This car is usable. This is the ugliest car I've ever seen. It has like a third headlight, like a third, you know? This half wagon, half horse, half semi-truck is usable as a mode of transportation. We didn't stop there because it's usable. This car is usable. This car is actually kind of awesome. That's me on the way in today. But the, and I don't remember what I was going to say after this. So, this is the order of things. We make decisions based on emotion first, and logic second. And when it comes to usability, humans are complex, and making usable, great experiences for humans is complex. And to manage that complexity, we often use data, and that's great and it's really effective. But if we focus too much on the data as designers, then we start thinking that like humans make decisions based on logic. But really, remember that part about how we're so crazy? We make decisions based on emotion first, logic second. So any good presentation that's trying to convince you of something will bastardize Maslow's hierarchy, which of course I will do as well. When it comes to product design, you first need to have, your product needs to be functional, right? Then it needs to be reliable, then it needs to be usable. This is kind of the standard approach to building mobile apps, software of any kind, interfaces of any kind. But if we revise that, my revision of that says, same base, all that stuff is really, really important, right? But at the top, I add pleasurable. Does your interface, does your app elicit joy? Is it a pleasure to use? Does it make an emotional connection? And what happens if it is pleasurable? What happens if it does make an emotional connection? I would say 4 things. Number 1, you create fans. Number 2, you cultivate forgiveness. Number 3, you differentiate. And number 4, you deter certain users, which I would argue is a good thing. So really quickly on each of these. If you create an emotional connection through design, your users are going to remember your apps better and talk about them more. Any time that we have an emotional experience, that creates a stronger imprint in our memory than if we're indifferent about it. Good or bad. It could be a good emotional experience, a bad emotional experience, but we will remember that experience better. So obviously, you want to create a good emotional experience for your users. It'll create a stronger imprint in their memory. They will remember your app, talk about your app more than if you don't create that emotional connection. As an extension of that, you can cultivate forgiveness. When something does go wrong, when the app is hard to use, if it crashes, whatever, they're going to be more apt or ready to give you a benefit of the doubt, continue to use the app. Think about Twitter. They survived being down forever all the time. But people loved that service and they had an emotional connection to it. We give the benefit of the doubt to people that we know, to the people that we have relationships with. Third, if you differentiate, there's a million apps out there. If you do make an emotional connection, if yours is one that people love, of course you're going to differentiate it. And number 4, you're going to deter certain users. Creating an emotional connection means you've got a personality. Having a personality means you're not going to get along with everyone because personalities don't always match up. I would argue that that's okay. It's much better to be really awesome and really great for your target audience than to try and build something that's going to please and cater to everyone. So what is emotion? Before we dive in, I read a bunch of medical journals, took out all the words I didn't understand, was left with 3 words. Babies are cute, right? They are. This is from like a cute baby wallpaper website. That's in my browser history now. But babies are cute. They're really the only creatures that can like scream all night. And I'm looking at my buddy Jeremy because I had dinner with him last night and we were talking about this. They can scream all night, keep you awake all night, and then like poop in your lap in the morning. And we still have this like this visceral gut instinct to cherish them, to hold them, to protect them, right? Donald Norman is one of the thought leaders in this subject of emotional design. He says, one of the ways by which emotions work is through neurochemicals that bathe particular brain centers and modify perception, decision-making, and behavior. These neurochemicals change the parameters of thought, right? And so there's a lot of research that shows babies are cute so in order to protect themselves, so that we don't kill them, right? Cuteness is their first line of defense. And I'm not saying that you need to make your app cute. Some of you guys actually do need to make your app cute. Let's be honest. Some of you guys have ugly babies. But I'm not saying that you need to make your app cuter. What I'm saying is I want you to understand this connection, right? The connection between this fact that your emotional response to the cuteness of the baby affects your behavior. It affects how you feel about that baby and the actions you take with that baby. And it's not just babies, right? Like we're such social creatures, us humans, that we have an emotional response to everything, and we kind of project emotion onto everything, including those inanimate objects. And so that emotion is what allows us to assign meaning to people and assign meaning to products. And over time, a consistent expression of emotion is what really kind of builds personality traits. And personality traits is what attracts us to or repels us from certain people or products. So, how do we do this? Well, how as designers, do we think about emotional design and apply that every day? I think there's a lot of ways to think about it. This is how I think about it. And I really think it's about 2 things at a high level. Keeping intention, 2 items. Number 1, you need to make it human. You need to think about making your design human. Number 2, you need to keep it animal. Right? And these things are intention. Animals, kind of scary. Humans, kind of awesome. Sweet spot in the middle, scary awesome. That's where you want to be. Okay? So I'm going to talk about both of these, both of keep it animal and make it human. Keep it animal first. Admittedly, emotional design is about making a human connection through design, emphasis on human, but I do think that there's a lot we can learn from our more animal, primordial side, right? So what can we leverage from evolution, or learn from evolution? I think 3 things. Number 1, attention is a scarce resource. So as humans, we're good at focusing on things, right? But we're kind of good at it. We're not so good at it that we can't focus on anything else. So if I'm looking at Jeremy and I'm focusing on Jeremy, and something happens and Zach's doing something in my peripheral vision, I can switch my focus. So I'm not like 100% focused on Jeremy. I'm able to switch focus. Right? And that's good, because evolutionarily speaking, that means that keeps me out of danger, because I don't know when Zach decides it's going to be a good time to tackle me. Right? And so, as a designer, you need to be thinking about this. I don't have time to go through too much of this chart, but there's a concept in design called flow. And if we look at this chart, on the bottom axis is skills from low to high, and the top axis is challenges. And as a designer, you want to keep your users in this flow state, right? So if the skill of the user is really low and the challenge your app provides, or what your app can do, or what the user needs to do relative to what your app can do, is too high, then the user has anxiety. If the skill of the user is too high, but the challenge is low, then your user is bored. And so as a designer, you need to keep your users and your customers in this flow state. You need to be paying attention to attention, if that makes sense. And so a great example of this is games, of course. Angry Birds does perfect execution of this, of keeping you in that flow state. When your customers are in a flow state, they're using your app and they forget what time it is. They look up and it's an hour later because they are not distracted by anything else. Angry Birds has that perfect combination. It's not too hard, but it's not too easy. You can get past that first level, you feel like you're getting good, you go to the next level, it's much harder, but you also don't have to spend 10 days just to get to the next level, so you leave the app. It's addictive because they've thought about keeping your attention. And it doesn't apply just to games, right? I think YouTube does a really good job thinking about the attention of their users. When I'm watching a movie in YouTube, I can minimize it, keep watching it, and browse for other movies. That way, if I get really bored because it's not funny in the first 2 seconds, I'm not leaving the app, right? And I still might continue watching that movie. They're increasing engagement and allowing me to find something else to watch, the next thing to watch. So attention is a scarce resource, number one. Number two, we're built for patterns. Evolutionarily speaking, we're really good at discerning signal from noise, right? But that has its limits. In any environment, whether it's in real life or on a screen, the number of elements, if there's a lot more elements, it becomes a lot harder for our brain to process, figure out what we can do, what we should do, what's going on, right? It's much easier for me to focus on Michael if it's just Michael and I in the room than it is for me to focus on and understand what Michael's doing if there's 100 people in the room, right? Hicks' law is a principle that really conveys this concept. The time it takes to make a decision increases with the number of alternatives, right? And so the example I like to give here is the Cash App. Does anyone use the Cash App from Square? Yeah? So it's a really, really simple way to send people cash. So if I want to send someone cash, I just type in the amount. That's all I can do on this screen. Brings up an email, and I can send them cash. Super simple, right? PayPal also lets me send cash. And here's a video of me doing that. I launch the app, I get some weird thing, I gotta log in. After I log in, I see this menu of the transaction history, I click another button to send, I fill out 15 fields. It allows me to do the same thing, but it's not a great experience. Like, I'll tell you that last time I sent someone cash, I used the Cash App, not PayPal, right? There's too much contrast, too many competing elements in the PayPal app. So we're good at patterns, bad at noise. And third, attractive things work better. So when something's beautiful, when something's attractive, it actually kind of triggers this thing on our brain. It changes our cognitive ability a little bit. So Donald Norman again on this exact same topic. Attractive things make people feel good, which in turn makes them think more creatively. How does that make something easier to use? Simple. By making it easier for people to find solutions to the problems they encounter. Okay? So quick examples of some apps that are considered really beautiful in our industry. RDO is often cited as a beautiful app. 500 Pixels is one of my personal favorites. It's not too hard to make a beautiful app when you've got beautiful professional photography in it. Kickstarter is also often cited as a really gorgeous, well-executed design, right? So attractive things work better, but only up to a point, right? There's a comedian, Dimitri Martin, that gives an example of this. So this chart is the cuteness of a girl versus how interested I am in hearing about how intuitive her cat is, right? So the cuter the girl, the more willing I am to hear about her cat, right? Oh yeah, he's very intuitive. But at a certain point, I don't want to hear about your cat anymore. Right? I don't like your cat. I don't care. Attractiveness only goes so far. So those are the three things in keeping an animal. Attention is a scarce resource. We're built for patterns, and attractive things work better. Of course, attractive things only work up to a point because it's the personality traits that attract us or repel over the long term in our relationships, right? So it's not just about keeping an animal when you're thinking about designs, it's about making it human. Okay? And so we know we need and want to make a human connection through design. So why not think about this from the standpoint of a human relationship? So that's what I did for this next section. This is my girlfriend. And she definitely knew about and approved of me using her photo in this presentation. And she's here right now, so I'm in like really deep trouble. But let's think about this from a human relationship as it applies to design. I thought of 10 things that make for a good human relationship, and we could argue about what those things are. I came up with 10, right? I think in this relationship with Amber, I think she wants me to be fun. I think I want her to be fun. She wants me to be conversational. She wants me to be empathetic. She wants me to be ambitious. She wants me to be myself. We want each other to be interesting, right? We need to be grateful. We need to surprise and delight once in a while. We need to dream together, and we need to inspire trust. So those are 10 things. Those resonate with most people. Any that you would take out. So let's go through each one of these and apply it to design. If we're trying to make a human connection through design, let's use some real-life relational principles. So, be fun. A great part about relationships, really great relationships, is that dull moments are really fun. You can be doing whatever, and it doesn't matter. You're with someone that you really like, right? So, applying that to design, make dull moments fun. I think Tweetbot makes things that are otherwise dull somewhat fun. In their new redesign, when you go to add an account, say you want to add one, but then you cancel it, the dialog box falls off the screen. Obviously, the default behavior in iOS is just that dialog box would disappear. But you know, some of their designers or developers are playing around with it. Why not be a little bit quirky? Why not have a little fun with it? JetSetter is an app that shows you really cool luxury hotel properties. I just really liked how, watch the upper left, they use their logo that turns into a loading spinner that turns into a back button. Again, it's super small, it's attention to detail, but it's fun. Like, a loading spinner is boring, but they were really creative with it. Polar is an app that lets you vote on kind of A versus B for any topic, right? Do you like bagels or buns better? Whatever. Polar bear is their mascot. You know the pull down to refresh pattern in Apple devices? Instead of just having a standard spinner, every time you pull down to refresh, they show a different picture of the bears. That's awesome. That's fun, right? It's attention to detail. They had to go above and beyond just doing the standard loading spinner thing when you pull down to refresh. Someone had to think about that, and someone had to find budget to implement it too, which is really impressive. The second part of being fun is focus on the micro interactions. As humans, we really enjoy the release and buildup of pressure, the potential and kinetic energy and the tension between those, right? We like explosions, and we like movies of people being hurled into space, and we like building things with blocks when we're little kids and knocking them all down, right? And so you can take advantage of this in your app designs as well. Clear App was pretty famous. This is a to-do list app that you've probably seen or heard or used. Got really famous because of this, right? They have some great interactions. You pull and you push and you pinch to create. It's not about the navigation in their app, it's about the gestures. Path. Very famous for this interaction where the adding content springs out. They did a lot of research and a lot of development and iterations on figuring out the exact right interaction. And you saw people when this app launched many years ago just like expanding and collapsing that because it was fun to watch. They just nailed that interaction. So be fun. Also be conversational. The first part of that is watch your tone. Right? How many of your parents, when you were little, said watch your tone? Right? How many of you had parents? Okay. So we all know that it's not always what you say, it's how you say it, right? So some examples here. Foursquare does a good job of being conversational. 2 years ago today, you found a crazy little app called Foursquare. Thanks for hanging out with us. It's subtle, but it's conversational, right? Red Stamp is a local company here that's just nailing it. Greeting card app. Sorry, I didn't let you see it. So nice to see you. We'll be right with you. Very conversational in tone. Zappos, we all know of. Their app. Your shopping cart is empty and would like some friends. That's great. They could have said 0 items, right? Most people would. But it adds a little bit of flair. It's fun. It's conversational. And then the second part of that is good conversation is two-way. And as that relates to design, that means it's all about feedback loops. So when you're designing things, every action that your user takes should have some sort of reaction. Path is a good example. As you scroll, they pop up a little bit of a detail item there that shows you the exact time that a post was published. It's one way to do a feedback loop. Solar is a weather app. As you scroll, you get immediate feedback. The clock is changing, the weather is changing based on the forecast, the colors in the background is changing. It's a fun way to interact with the app. So be fun, be conversational, be empathetic. When you're in a relationship, empathy is about anticipating other people's needs, right? It's about knowing that person well enough to anticipate their needs. And as a designer, you need to meet your customers where they're at. You need to understand their mobile lifestyle, their motivations as people in motion, and meet them where you're at with the service you offer and the design that you offer in your app. My favorite example of this is the Amazon app. Like, where are you going to use the Amazon app and search for something on your phone? Probably in a store in the Best Buy aisle, right? Oh, I probably shouldn't say we're in Best Buy. The Walmart aisle, Target aisle, I don't know.
It doesn't matter what retailer it is.
Yeah, exactly. Any retailer. So what did they do? You can, inside the Amazon app, you can search, and I could go look up 55-inch Vizio TV, but I'm probably standing in the aisle, right? And so they thought about this. When you go to search, they're like, yeah, you can search here for 55-inch Vizio TV, or we know you're standing in front of the barcode. Why don't you just scan it, right? So they give you a button right beneath the search to scan it. They're anticipating your needs. They're meeting you where you're at. Google Maps, if you're logged in on your desktop computer to look up an address for a map, and then you go into your car, and you got to re-look it up on your phone because you're not looking at your laptop in your car. I do this all the time. And you're logged into your phone, it'll show up in your recent history on your phone, right? So it's kind of creepy, but kind of awesome. Open Table, if you launch that app and it's like 5 p.m., right? It says, hey, guess what? You're probably looking for a table for 2 tonight at 7 p.m., and here's all the restaurants around you. And of course, I can update that search criteria, but instead of just having a blank slate and saying, okay, enter all the stuff you want, they're just like, yeah, you know what? Most people want to have dinner tonight, and it's probably for 2 people. So, anticipating needs, being empathetic. Number 4, be ambitious. Take some risks. I think, in relationships, if you never have the courage to ask someone out, you're never going to have that great relationship. If you don't have the courage to have challenging conversations, you're not going to have a great, sustaining relationship. Apply that to design in terms of being ambitious and taking some risks. It's a little bit risky to take risks in design sometimes, but it does often work out. Clear took a lot of risks. There's thousands of to-do lists out there. Clear got really famous because they bucked the trend. They took some risks in their interface. Facebook introduces new patterns and concepts along the way. The chat bubbles is a good example of that. They're taking some risks, introducing new patterns that will probably become more ubiquitous over time. Path was one of the first to implement the drawer navigation and kind of push that forward. And it's now, it's an official pattern on Android and the Android design guidelines for how to do navigation. And you see it in a lot of iOS apps too. This can also backfire. There's this like a Craigslist app that someone made, and it has almost every anti-pattern in iOS that could possibly exist. So that's why you have to be careful when you're being ambitious. You need to do it in a way that makes sense to your audience. Basically, don't have like a modal that has tabs and scrolling lists with a back button. in your app. Number 5, be yourself. You need to have a personality and own it, right? People want to be, consistent expression of a particular emotion is perceived as a personality trait, right? And personality traits determine the relationships we form. So MailChimp is a pretty famous example of having a really great mascot. I don't know what their chimp. What's his name? Does anyone know the chimp's name? Freddie, yeah. Freddie's the chimp's name. And he's got this personality. And they make emails, sending mass emails like less shitty. And like that's why their brand has taken off, because they've played with it, they had a little fun. They own their personality, right? Everything they do comes back to that. Hipmunk is a travel app that attempts to do the same thing, but I think it's a little unfortunate. They've got all of this space for the chipmunk, and he doesn't do anything. He doesn't animate, he doesn't say anything, he's not funny, he's not sad. So the lesson there is, don't half-ass personalities to chipmunks. Zappos, I think, does an awesome job with owning their style, having a style even, and then being consistent with that. When you add something to the cart, watch this. The cat jumps out of the button and drops it into your cart. That's just weird. But it does it. It always does it. But they have, it's like their personality. You can see Zappos doing that, right? If you know anything about their company. And they just own it. They own it. Google Maps, I like this because when the directions are wrong or something, you can shake the app to send them feedback. So after you shake the app, it gives you the message, do you want to send feedback? Because you're mad at it, right? I really like that pattern. Same thing with Dark Sky, this weather app. If it says that it's sunny outside, you walk outside, it's raining, you shake the app to send them feedback and say, hey, this isn't working. Don't apply this one to relationships, right? Like, it's not good to do it. And then a second part of personality and owning your style is taking advantage of error states. I mean, obviously errors are going to happen. Bad things are going to happen, especially in mobile. Errors are a great way to add personality. Dark Sky is a weather app. They do a decent job. Oh no, forecast unavailable. It's conversational, right? But I really like this. If they can't find your location, they can't get a GPS lock, instead of saying no location found or GPS not acquired, they say middle of nowhere. Because that's probably true. You're either in the middle of nowhere or you're downtown where you can't get a GPS signal. Flickr, when you sign in, oops, a little hiccup here, please sign in again. It's kind of playful, right? And this is kind of the anti-example, Taxi Magic. If you ever use this app, if you don't have an internet connection, it'll tell you 4 times how much you suck. Like internet unavailable, network problem, servers unavailable, error. This is all right in a row. You're just pressing OK, 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 OK again. You can't do anything else. Number 6, be interesting. Right? In good relationships, you want to be really comfortable. You don't want to be complacent. I think really great relationships, people are giving each other more to discover. People are open to discovering more about each other. And I really love apps that kind of embrace this, right? Dark Sky, again, they have these really cool interactions. I should have had a video of when it's raining or storming. There's these really cool graphs and it's all dynamic. But if it's clear outside, they say, hey, clear skies are boring. Like, where you're living right now is boring. Go check out this storm in Texas. And then they show you that animation for the storm in Texas. That's cool. Like, they're engaging you even though, like, into the coolest feature of their app, even though it's, like, kind of boring where you're at right now. Kickstarter, if you just play around with this isn't a documented feature, but if you start playing around with it, and I'm logged into Andy's account here, you see a pie chart of all of the different categories or types of projects you funded. So technology, arts, whatever. And usually it has the percentages. The video didn't pick that up, but it's just kind of a hidden feature, something for you to discover. this for me, maybe everyone knew this, but even in Apple's own apps, there's little things like this. In iMessage, if you want to see the timestamp in iOS 7, you don't see it by default. You pull over to the left, and you get to see the timestamp. I was blown away by that. Be grateful, number 7. This one's a little outside of the context of like everyday down in the weeds design, but people have emotions before and after they use your app, not just during the time that they're using your app. So think about that. When Wufoo launched their online form service, software as a service, they were pretty famous actually for sending thousands of handwritten notes to their customers. And people talked about it, right? They felt happy. They were surprised to receive a handwritten note from one of the developers at Wufoo just for signing up for an account. People have emotions before and after they use your app. Number 8, surprise and delight. That letter that Andy had received after signing up for Wufoo was a surprise, right? It was in a good way. It was delighting to him. A moment of surprise compresses emotion into a split second and makes our reaction more intense, thereby creating a stronger imprint in our memory, right? So think about the little things on how you can delight your users, on how you can, like, even if it's a really small little surprise, it can go a long way. Precious Status is an app that allows people, parents, to get updates on their kids in daycare. And you can scroll through and see all the updates, like Addison ate her breakfast, and when you click the heart on loving it, it kind of beats. It pulses like a real heartbeat. And it's kind of a fun interaction. And it makes the parents want to do it more. And so they're engaging more with the app because they're kind of delighted by this little surprise. National Geographic is pretty famous for their apps and how they've designed them. They give you a bunch of stats. It's kind of deep in the app, but they give you a bunch of stats, and you'll notice that they all kind of roll into place as you scroll. Those could have just been static screens, but they made it a little more fun. It's a little bit of a surprise. It's delightful interaction. And again, it's attention to detail. In a good relationship, you want to dream together. And that's really about anticipation, right? You anticipate that first date. You anticipate getting married. You anticipate going on that vacation. You anticipate having kids. That's what makes it fun. It's the anticipation that leads up to it. So anticipation is the temporal opposite of surprise. We talked about surprise in number 8. Number 9 is dreaming and anticipation. Both are really important. Both can be really effective tools. So anticipation is really the opposite of surprise. When we create anticipation, we foreshadow the desired event and give the audience ample time to ponder the experience. So a really successful example of this was Mailbox. When they launched their email client for iPhone, they made people wait in line, right? You could see how many people were in front of you. When you downloaded the app, you couldn't use it right away. You had to wait in line. How many people are in front of you? How many people are behind you? So they built this sense of anticipation. Uber does a good job with anticipation, right? When you order a car, you can actually see it coming towards you. You look forward to it, and you can see the driver coming towards you to come pick you up on the map in real time. And it works really well unless the driver goes the wrong way to come pick you up, which happened to me the other day. But this idea of uncertainty is important too, right? We really embrace this because it can be an effective tool in design, I should say, because we always yearn to end the mystery and see if the outcome meets our expectations. So, an example here, Tinder, the online dating app. They just nailed this idea of uncertainty and anticipation. So in this app, you have to say, okay, yes, I'm interested in this person, or I'm not. And then you can't move on to the next person until you've decided on that person. But the way that humans work is you always are thinking about the uncertain, what's next, right? So if you're looking at this person's picture, you're like, okay, whatever, what's the next person, right? But you are forced to take action on this one. So they've created this loop of uncertainty that it has crazy engagement if you look at their numbers. as a company and a social app. So that's why they took off like wildfire. Kayak does a good job. If you search for flights, right, the search results come in and they show you the results as they come in, right? But not only that, I've noticed, and I don't know if this is always true, but I've noticed many times the lower priced ones come in at the end, right? That's intentional. Because you're feeling like, yeah, Kayak's working hard for me. These results are coming in, and like it's gonna get lower. Come on, big money, and then you see the lowest one at the end. It's not like the $200 flight comes in first, and then it's like $1,300 next, right? Yeah. And number 10, the last one, is inspiring trust. And I put this last because if we do all those other 9, then that really takes care of the trust thing, right? Like if we're empathetic and we're grateful and we start to, in a relationship, right, we start to break down barriers and we start to trust one another. And so it's the same in mobile app design. If you're doing all these things, you're thinking about all these things, you're working to create an emotional connection, that really helps inspire trust. And if you do that, if you can inspire trust, then you're going to have these things happen. You're going to create fans, you're going to cultivate forgiveness, you're going to differentiate, and you're going to deter, you're going to make sure you're catering to the right users, right? And so if you can keep this in mind, if you can walk this line between making it human and keeping it animal, if you can understand the connection between emotion and action, then you're going to go a long way to making a great design for great users. And if there's one thing you walk away with today, make sure you understand that relationships, both in real life and with your users through design, are cultivated. They're not manufactured. And the next time that you yell at your phone, think about why you're doing that. That's it. Thanks, guys.